Hey, Phil.
Hi.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much.
Great. So let's grab you some water while we're up here. I wanted to ask you first of all
Thank you.
about, the journey in terms of, I remember, so you're Europe's fastest growing company. I remember reading that you kind of weren't obviously maybe anticipating this. It sounds great being that fast growth, but there must be downsides as well. Do you want to sort of like talk a little bit about how great that is, but also maybe sort of some of the challenges you've had to face because of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think as you said, I set out to solve a problem. I wanted great food delivered quickly, which is why I started the company. I didn't set out to create what's become a big company.
Yeah.
It's just kind of happened. And I think, as we've become more successful, our ambitions have increased as well. So it's sort of a self-fulfilling thing. Yeah, I mean, to go from 2 people in the beginning, me and Greg, to now 2,000 employees in, I guess, 5.5 years, definitely is challenging. I think for me, number one is internal communications. When you're in a room with 10 people, everyone knows what's going on. And when you're in 13 countries now, with staff all over the place, it's a lot more challenging. And I think secondly, scaling internal decision-making definitely takes more time now. So
Sure.
There are definitely a lot of challenges that come with it.
And with the internal decision-making, how do you kind of structure that? Do you tend to let people be autonomous, or do you like to kind of make sure that you know exactly what's going on at any moment in time?
I know what's going on for sure, but I'm not, it's not like I know exactly what decisions to make for every single person. So I would say definitely keep a very close eye on things, but people have a high degree of autonomy.
Okay. So you built this business from the ground up. A lot of people here work at incumbents, large organizations. I'd love to get a sense from you of what advice you would be able to give maybe someone working in a large organization who's hearing about significant change in the world. They realize they have to adapt. What's your viewpoint on how best large companies can transform themselves in the coming years?
I think just understand your consumer, understand what their pain points are, understand what they're going to want in a few years, and don't dismiss new ideas as silly. I think when we started this business, everyone told us it wouldn't succeed because A, it was complicated, but B, there was a big incumbent called Just Eat, and so why would you ever start this business? Yeah. And in fact, I remember the founder of one very large food delivery marketplace in the US, he was very nice. I asked for his advice before I started this company, and he said, well, why would you ever handle the logistics if restaurants are willing to do it? Yeah. Right? And I was like, that sounds kind of reasonable, but I think a lot of them don't.
Sure. So it's about keeping the customer at the sort of center of every decision you make.
100%.
Okay. You talked a little bit about decision-making within the company. Clearly you're scaling. How many people do you say work for the organization?
About 2,000.
About 2,000.
Yeah.
How do you go about building that right team? Like, is it about kind of ensuring that there's a culture that's kind of a vein of culture that's running all the way through the organization, or do you look for very sort of specific types of people?
I think that it depends on the stage of the company. When we first started the company, I funded it myself for the first year, and I was basically looking for anyone who would join. And I was laughing with a woman who works with me. She recently left, but she worked with us for 4 years. But she had the chance to become the first employee, and she turned us down for an internship at like some other company. And I was like, hey, why'd you do that? She goes, well, you interviewed me in a KFC. Like, she was like, you didn't seem legitimate at all. So I think it just depends on, the stage of where you're at. And over time, we've been able to build those processes and structures. But it's still a, huge struggle for me. I probably spend 40% of my time on hiring. And I spend a lot of time on not just my direct reports, but 2-3 layers down as well. Okay. It's really critical to get that right.
So now when you do job interviews, you can at least get the KFC delivered, presumably, right?
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
You're a marketplace logistics platform, but clearly you're fundamentally, you refer to kind of keeping the customer at the kind of the center of everything. You're about the customer experience fundamentally.
We have 3 customers, though.
Right,
It's very important
okay.
to point that out. We have restaurants, we have riders, and we have people that order the food.
So how do you keep all 3 happy at the same time?
It's really about understanding what they want, right? So I think when we think about the end customer, we think about price, selection, service, some combination of that to keep them happy. I think for our restaurant partners, it's about revenues and also the order experience itself. Are we getting food to people on time?
Yep.
How's the digital experience? Are we integrated with their POS system? Are we providing them data to allow them to expand their business? And for our riders, it's always been a combination of flexibility, pay, and increasingly benefits as well.
So talking about the restaurant partners, give us an example of how you provide data to them that helps them to grow their business. How would that work?
Well, so for example, we've launched a few new suites of data services for them recently where they can log in and say, where do I compare with my peers in this neighborhood on prep times? What are my ratings like compared to my peers? And we give them a sense of how are they doing, and then we give them concrete feedback as to how can you use this data to get better. So it's a combination of not just a self-serve data platform, but also an account management system that are humans.
Sure.
That say, hey, this is what the data means.
Sure.
And so I don't think you can just have pure data and expect people to sort of figure it out. I think you need people to really sit down with restaurants and help explain what this means and what are the actions we can take to make things better for everyone.
And they still see the upside of, I remember seeing a talk by Jack Hydery a couple of years ago, and he was talking specifically about food delivery, and he was saying the challenge for restaurants, or it doesn't necessarily mean restaurants, but any kind of retailer, when they hand over, when they start partnering with a company like Deliveroo or Postmates or whoever,
Yeah.
is that you're handing over the customer, right? So the actual kind of point of delivery, they're seeing a Deliveroo or a Postmates worker. How do you get over that? Is it simply just about you can show increased revenue and it's making a business decision?
Well, I mean, that's a really great question. Our brand is an extension of the brands of the restaurants, right? And so them having the trust in us to perform at a high level is absolutely critical.
Yeah.
So it's not just about revenues, it's about, like I said, the service side as well, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's more than that. It's a relationship, right? Restaurants are emotional places, and having that relationship with restaurants and having the ability to tell their story in an online format is really critical. And that's something we're trying to figure out and work on.
So you're in 12 countries now?
We're actually launching our 13th market. I'm actually going to get on a flight tonight to do that. We're launching Taiwan, which is really exciting.
Congratulations.
Yeah, which will be.
Is that news today? Is that something that journalists in this room can report?
I think we reported on it a few weeks ago, unfortunately.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm excited. My parents are from there, so I look forward to spending some time there.
So tell me, how does that work when you go to a new territory? How do you? Presumably there are incumbents there already.
Yeah.
And how do you sort of begin to understand that new marketplace? If you're coming in completely new, how do you get riders on board? How do you build that trust with your service providers and restaurants?
Well, the good news is we've done it 12 times before. So the 13th time is hopefully smoother than some of the experiences we've had in the past. And we've learned a lot from expanding into different countries. And this time I'm really proud of the team. They did it in kind of a record amount of time. But it's going to take a long time to gain the trust of restaurants, riders, and customers. It doesn't happen right away. But so far so good on Taiwan.
So what's the first step when you go into a new territory? How do you start to build a new sort of Deliveroo?
So we always start on the rider side and the restaurant side first,
Yeah.
to make sure there's liquidity on those sides, and then we start the consumer demand generation side.
Okay.
And initially, it's not going to be big. It's people friends of friends. You really spend some time making sure the operations work in an effective way, and then you kind of scale up marketing after that.
Sure. And incumbents, presumably they're not too happy to see Deliveroo arriving in Taiwan?
I just think the food delivery space is so early right now. There's room for a lot of different players. But what we're focused on is price, selection, and service to the customer. Of course, we pay attention to the competition, but we're pretty laser focused on those three things.
Okay. So you talked about the fact that 40% of your time is spent now on hiring, and clearly there are multiple decisions to be made, especially if you're expanding into other territories. How do you maintain, I think it's a challenge for everyone now, how do you maintain like a long-term sort of vision for what Deliveroo, what you'd like to see, where you'd like to see it go, whilst at the same time making all these sort of like important decisions you need to make on a daily basis?
I think I've spent more time on that than I have in the past, right? In the first few years, you're just scrambling. I've told this story a million times, but I did deliveries every single day for the first year, right? So I was very operational. And in the last few years, as we've become bigger, our ambitions have grown as well. And so our very clear 5-year, 10-year goal is to become the definitive food company in the same way, we think of Spotify as the music company, et cetera, et cetera. And how we get there, we're taking steps at a time. For example, we have hundreds of delivery-only kitchens that we've built. And so we're getting deeper and deeper in relationships with restaurants to facilitate that. And I think that, where our business is in 10 years' time, I think will be really different than today. But I know what we're not going to do. We're not going to get involved in non-food types of products. We're dead set on really food, because food's an emotional thing. We all love it. This is what we talk about every day in the office. And so that part's pretty clear.
Yeah, food is an emotional thing. It spoils easily. You mentioned Spotify and obviously Netflix are delivering digital products. You're delivering something that's very kind of tangible.
Totally.
That goes cold. How do you use data science in order to sort of ensure that the food's getting into people's hands in the right way? I mean,
yeah,
it's a tough thing to get into someone's
I
hands.
think people, they from the outside, you may not think too hard about the technology that we employ, but we have 50, 60, 70,000 riders moving around at any given time. We work with 50, 60,000 restaurants, and we've got, a ton of customers. And the interaction between all three of those, this is what our data science team works on. How can we have the rider wait less at the restaurant? How can we give the rider a better route to go? How do we assign the right rider to an order? These are all machine learning models that we employ that retrain on an hourly or daily basis. So this is what we do. This is at the heart of our business, how all the pieces connect together.
So let's talk a little bit about the gig economy. There seems to be kind of something of a kind of a tension around notions of flexible working practices and also people having job security. Do you think those things are reconcilable?
I think so. I mean, for us, maybe it's worth kind of just talking a little bit about what riders care about, right? So for us, flexibility has been the number one thing repeatedly in the surveys we run. And what does flexibility actually mean? It means the ability to log in and out whenever you want out of a job. It means not working on a shift pattern. It means fitting work around your life. So the average Deliveroo rider around the world works with us 12 hours a week. It's generally not a full-time type job, so that's why you have a lot of students. The barriers to entry to becoming a rider are very low. You need a bicycle and a smartphone, two things most people already have. So that's sort of flexibility. Number two is pay, right? In the UK, on average, we pay over £10 an hour. In France, we pay 16 euros an hour. Mm-hmm. Now, I think that flexibility combined with pay has been traditionally what has attracted people to the job. Now, I also have a lot of sympathy for people that are seeking benefits as well, and traditionally there's been this disconnect between flexibility and security. Now, my view on this is pretty straightforward. I'm not a politician, I'm not a lawmaker, I'm not a journalist. The way I think about it is, if you work with Deliveroo, say 40 hours a week, 50 hours a week, you should have rights that are much more like an employee than if you log in twice a month, right? And we're working with governments to try to figure that out, to try to figure out what is a new way of working that has happened so quickly. So I actually understand the tension, I understand even some of the criticism, because some of this stuff has happened so quickly. But the reality is, I care about what our riders want. That's the most important thing to me.
Sure, you mentioned you're working with government. We had the Taylor report last year. Hasn't really led to sort of much that's tangible. Do you think it'll be actually useful to people like yourself running gig economy companies to actually have more of a definite framework from government. There doesn't seem to be like real clear direction.
100% would welcome that. I mean, we don't want to, have the courts decide everything. We want guidance from the government, and we want to be part of that discussion. Now, our government here is pretty busy on a number of things, so maybe it's not on the top of their agenda, but we would welcome that, absolutely, and want to be part of that discussion.
Okay, well, time's up, but I realize you're not going to obviously comment on any kind of rumors in the press about a potential sort of deal with Uber, but let's just, as a final thing, you've had a pretty incredible journey over the last 6 years. Business moves quickly, as we've kind of one of the themes of the day. I'm not going to ask you to look too far in the future, but where do you see the company going in the next 2-3 years? What would you like to see?
I wish I could tell you past the next 6 months, but
all right, give us 6 months.
We're expanding, in a lot of different countries with our kitchens concept. We're bringing content. We think about food. You talked about Spotify, Netflix. We think about food in the same way. It's emotional content.
Yeah.
We want to bring that to areas that where people want it. And that's kind of what we're dead set focused on, to try to expand people's selection at different price points and make sure people get things faster. So it's pretty clear short-term types of goals we're focused on.
Okay, and no more job interviews in KFC, right?
I'll do it once in a while. I'll just go and eat, though. Yeah.
Okay, great. Will, thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right.